everybody, my name is Jackie and I'm a nutrition and dietetic intern at Rowan University. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to properly fuel before a run because the timing and the content of the food can be a little bit tricky. If you get it wrong, as some people may know if you're seasoned runners, it could really impact the quality of your run as it might lead to an upset stomach or it could lead to stomach cramping. So if you're headed out for an easy, low intensity run, whether it be 20 minutes or 45 minutes, it might be okay to run on an empty stomach. For some people, they feel perfectly fine running on an empty stomach, but for others, they feel totally depleted on energy. So it's really just a personal preference and it's about finding what works for you. When you're running on an empty stomach, your body's gonna rely on fat stores to break down for energy. This might be okay for a shorter, lower intensity run, but if you're preparing for something more high intensity or a longer distance run, then you're really gonna wanna fuel up on some good food, preferably something rich in carbohydrates. This is so that glycogen stores that are stored in the muscles and glucose are readily going to be available in your bloodstream for your body to utilize when it needs it most. Glycogen is the body's first preferred source of fuel during a run, so it's really important to load up on carbohydrates so that you have a lot of energy for when you actually go out there and start running. This is because glycogen can easily be broken down into glucose, which enters the bloodstream and is utilized for energy. So that begs the question, what should you actually eat before a run? And that all depends on when you're planning to go out and actually run. So as a general rule of thumb, you really want to stick to something that's very rich in carbs, very carb heavy. As another rule of thumb, you want to typically avoid foods that are high in fat or fiber, or maybe even a lot of protein if you're eating right before a run. This is because fat, fiber, and protein generally take a longer time to digest than carbohydrates do, so it might lead to an upset stomach or cramping once you actually get out there and start running. So if you're eating something right before you run, or maybe even a half an hour to an hour before your run, depending on how sensitive your stomach is, you want to go for a snack that is as low in fat, protein, and fiber as possible, and very high in carbohydrates. One good option is a slice of white toast with a little bit of peanut butter, butter, or honey if preferred. And usually whole grains and whole wheat breads are healthier or generally healthier than white breads and refined grains. But for our purposes, because refined grains are digested so quickly, our body is going to utilize that glucose for energy right away. And so we're going to end up having a lot of energy when we go out there and we start actually running. Some other great options are white rice, some plain pasta, or a fruit with a high glycemic index like a banana, watermelon, pineapple, or mango. But keep in mind that the fruit also does contain a good bit of fiber, and so it's about finding that balance. Again, everyone is different, so it might take a little bit of time and experimentation to find out what exactly works for you. Believe it or not, when I used to run track and cross country, I used to eat a few gummy bears before my race because they're very high in sugar, and so I knew that it would supply me with the glucose and therefore energy I needed that could be broken down very, very quickly and ready for my body to utilize right away when I'm exerting a lot of energy. This is a common practice also used by marathon runners, half marathons, or people who do triathlons because they are running for a long, long period of time. They might feel a little bit depleted of energy, so they'll use something like a candy or a sports drink that has a lot of sugar in it to get that glucose into their blood and ready to use for energy. If you're eating 2 to 3 hours before a run, you have more leeway with the amount of fat, fiber, and protein that you can contain in your meal, but you still want to focus mainly on getting in a lot of carbohydrates. This is because this allows more time for digestion, so it will be less likely that you'll get an upset stomach or any sort of cramping while you actually go out to run. In fact, it's actually a good thing to incorporate a little bit of fat, fiber, and protein during your meals if it's 2 to 3 hours before a run, because it will maintain satiety, so it'll be less likely that you'll get hungry later on and have to eat something before you run. A great meal that you can eat 2 to 3 hours before you run, and my personal favorite, is a bowl of oatmeal with some banana, and then if you want to add a little bit of sweetness, you can add in some honey and some peanut butter to incorporate a little bit of fat and protein in with your meal. The oats in this meal are very rich in carbohydrates and also provide a good amount of fiber that will also help with satiety. Some other great options are avocado toast, or you can have a little bit of low-fat yogurt with granola and fruit. Or you could opt for rice with quinoa and any sort of lean meat like chicken. So the main takeaway here is that the closer you get to your run, the more carbohydrates you want to have with minimal amount of fiber, fat, and protein. Naturally, if the fiber content of the meal or the snack is lower, the more likely it is that the carbohydrate that you're consuming is going to be refined, which is okay in this circumstance because since it's digested so quickly, the glucose in your blood will be readily available for your body to use for energy. At the end of the day, remember that everybody's body is different and what works for one person might not work for you. So it may take time to experiment with the timing and what you eat before a run so that you can avoid upset stomach and cramping. Once you find something that does work for you, be sure to stick to it. I hope this video was helpful and gave you some insight on what to eat and when to eat before your run. And maybe even a few snack and meal ideas to try out in the future. Thank you for listening, and I'm wishing everybody a happy run.